Behind the Middle Belt killings is Caliphate ethnic cleansing. Behind Niger Delta agitation is Caliphate seizure of oil and gas. Behind Biafra and Odua agitation, Caliphate imposed unitary Nigeria. Behind the Caliphate itself is the rogue 1999 Constitution. Elections 2023 is Caliphate push to retain the 1999 fraud. Nigerians, say no to any further election in the country. Let's take down the 1999 Constitution and save our people and our land.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend to this Joint NINAS weekly Clubhouse session. Today's topic is New Constitution Gambit, a NINAS Reprimand to National Assembly. In the next 21 minutes, we will be listening to a NINAS broadcast entitled New Constitution Gambit, a NINAS Reprimand to National Assembly. At the end of the New Constitution Gambit, we will also listen to a 2-minute broadcast of late Nigerian military head of state, Murtala Mohammed, recorded on Saturday, October 18, 1975, entitled Commissioning Draft of 1979 Constitution, now 1999 Constitution. As you listen, kindly take note of the following words: continued existence of a united Nigeria, unitary government imposed by the colonial government, federal system, and modified version of federalism. We brought this 1975 broadcast to show Nigerians, particularly those from the NINAS Alliance territory, that the Caliphate used their military wing after 1966 to step back into the British-imposed unitary government or imposed unitarism. Thank you for listening.
It is for certain a wrong, totally wrong, and we are prepared to have a debate with anybody who feels able to come to say, including the Olisabakova, that is misleading this bunch of, I don't know how to describe these people who are sitting on the sovereignty of the people, sitting in the refuge camp of regional renegades they call Abuja, totally secluded from the people, sharing the blood of the people in the name of allocation, in the name of governance, having standing on the constitution that hijacked the sovereignty of the people. And the people have organized themselves in the process that will see them retrieving their sovereignty either into a new political arrangement, that's a new union they agree completely among themselves, or unilaterally taking their portion and taking a walk. We had Professor Shoyinka talking about it only a few days ago.
When the word restructuring is bruited around, we often hear the challenge, hey, what do you mean by restructuring? Well, I don't even like the word restructuring. I prefer the expressions like reconfiguration, decentralization. Everybody can grasp that. Decentralization. And those who lead us, they recognize the necessity of it. They recognize the importance, almost the inevitability of it, until they get in power. Yes, that's the difference. Until they get in power. Deconstruction, reconfiguration, decentralization, all this is necessary in order to maximize development. We speak about food hunger because it is real. But palliatives are temporary stopgap policies. They do not reach to the heart of the problem, which is one of decentralized development as massively as possible.
Professor Shoyinka did identify, even not being a lawyer, he had been involved in this process sufficiently from the days of Nadeko when he was operating as Nalicon. He became co-convener in the Pronaco that began to organize the people for how they were going to rework their union. He was co-plaintiff with Nooro and Ojukwu in the suit that went to court to say that the 2007 and 2009 that went to court to establish the false basis to challenge the legitimacy of this the fraud you see in my hand. And so he's been involved sufficiently to be able to do what he did at the 50th anniversary event of Punch newspaper, where I'm talking about Shoyinka now, where he was explaining to the country that Nigeria has come to where we have to either dismantle it peacefully so that people don't die, or we go to rework it wholesale. That reworking, he says, instead of talking about restructuring that nobody seems to know how to describe, that it is a reconfiguration of the union, a wholesale reconfiguration of the union, which starts with the dismantling of the bad arrangement that is not working. We have all seen it's not working. How long shall we maintain this pretense? He said reconfiguration. He also identified the fact the people who have to do that business of that reconfiguration. It is the constituent components of Nigeria, the Yoruba, bringing their Yoruba land to federate with Ijo as Ijo, that is on Ijo land, and Igbo on Igbo land, and Berom on Berom land. These are the peoples of Nigeria, not any group of people you meet in Osho, the marketplace, or the market. No, it is identify the land, because we're talking about aggregation of lands and peoples into one political union. So that arrangement that brings them together. You cannot come and fence them, from outside like the British did in 1914. They just came there without talking to any one of them. You fenced the external the boundaries, and then you called it a name and began to tell them that they are now in marriage amongst themselves. That's how we came here, and now it has injured us sufficiently, and we have organized. We who are the victims of that bad arrangement have organized. As there's no difference between the amalgamation of 1914 and the amalgamation of 1999. They were both done by fiat, with no reference to the people who are going to be federated. And so, unfortunately for the authors of this fraud, they put our signature as the authorization for this abomination, and that is what we are pulling back. And as Professor Shoyinka did point out in his lecture at Punch event, that there's this like demonic fear of paralyzing fear that this Nigeria will break up. It is in refusing to go to discuss the union and the terms of the union that you are now providing a guarantee that the union will break up. What we are doing, what NINAS is doing, is the last opportunity. Those who want to have a union will have to get to that. Otherwise, right now, we have no union. The instrument that brought the union, that is keeping the union right now, has been defeated. It's dead. The National Assembly has acknowledged it by going to search for a new constitution, which they have no power to make. And so, let us be clear-minded that the only thing that can happen, like we saw in the case of Yugoslavia, they refused to discuss. It went up in smoke. Today we have Croatia and the other countries that came out from it. Macedonia, 6 countries. But we saw the festival of blood that preceded because they refused to discuss. But we look also at the old Soviet Union. It came to where they just went back to their natural fault lines, and we have 16 countries or so, 15. We don't know what will happen to Crimea eventually, So it is in that sense that we once more invite everybody to take this opportunity of come down from our high horses, all of those who think they can keep Nigeria by brigandage. We come down from our high horses, get into a transition as quickly as we can, and go discuss those two questions. If we don't, by that act of refusing to, we're only saying farewell to the failed Lugadian experiment of 1914. So we come back to telling the National Assembly that no alphabet would be taken from this 1999 Constitution. And if anybody would then say, oh, we are going to amend it, like we saw, I don't know who on behalf of the Bar Association of Nigeria, before Lisabokaba came to preach his nonsense to them. You know, the Bar Association had issued a notice inviting all the lawyers in Nigeria to please come with memorandum for how National Assembly will do amendment of everything that needs to be amended in the Constitution. The contention of NINAS, in case anybody had been deaf or dumb all this while, the contention of NINAS is simple. We have not made any constitution, full stop. We neither met, we didn't agree, nor write anything. We just did not do what was alleged to have been done, which was now basis of which became basis of the instrument that has now hijacked our lives. With a 68 item exclusive list, like 68 chains. When you hear exclusive list, it is like tying somebody up or a group of people with 68 different ropes, chains. That I don't have electricity is because there's one item on that list that says only the federal government can generate and transmit to me. So they shut down my Oji River in Enugu and to plunge me into darkness in Aba and Onitsha and Nnewi and everywhere in between. You can't do your highway. You can't do your port. You can't do your security. Your security. They take the asset by that exclusive list. They take the assets, economic asset. They take the power to work that asset. So the job and their oil and gas. Nigeria takes the oil and gas without exclusive list. Nigeria takes the right to refine without exclusive list. So they are selling, they are refining. If you take any quantity, you become a criminal. Because Nigeria, there's only one criminal in the arena. The Nigerian state that is coming to take without talking to the owners. What is the definition of robbery or stealing? Is when you come to take without the consent of the owner. If Nigeria were to cease to exist today, who will be the owner of this body of waters? Who will be the owner of each of these lands? The Yoruba know with the beginning and the end of their land. It is not disputed, and that is the basis of sovereignty. That's the basis of self-determination. That they are in their land unchallenged by any other group. They've not been conquered or dislodged. As it is with Yoruba, so it is with Ijo, so it is with Igbo, so it is with Ogoni, Ana, Efe, Urobo. Everybody knows their lands. And the Nigeria we're talking about is the aggregation of all these lands. The fact that the National Assembly is now setting out to go and write a new constitution is an admission of the truth that the old constitution is dead. And what that means is that right now, the business to discuss is whether the constituent components of the defunct Federation of Nigeria, because the union anchored on that constitution is out of the way. But there are still the Yoruba, there are still the Ijo, there are still the Igbo, there are still the Ogoni clustering around here. There are still people in Abuja sharing beer and wine in the name of governing Nigeria and presiding over Nigeria and legislating for Nigeria. All that can be going on. But the serious business that has turned up to be done now, very urgently too, is to settle the question, the two questions Bola Ige raised a long time ago. Do we still want to federate as the peoples of Nigeria, not anybody else? And if yes, on what terms? Those are the two things that have to be settled before any other business. If those two things are not being done, I can assure you that the collapse, the death, the demise of the 1999 Constitution means that the union anchored on it is no more, and therefore the sovereignties confiscated, the and conscripted into that Nigerian Union are now free to be taken by those who can organize themselves. Their sovereignty is inalienable. Their right to determine for themselves how they live in their space is inalienable. Combine the two and juxtapose with your dead instrument. The union and the agreement to unionize is what we call the constitution. And we knew what we agreed upon. We agreed to be a federation. And we are no longer a federation. We agreed to be a secular state. We are no longer a secular state. Because some people impose Sharia. Because some people, fractured that federation. Why is it so? He was part of how he was at the center of, he was the one that fractured the four regions on the 27th of May in 1967. It was on that day, by decree number 14 of 1966, that Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, who is still loafing around praying for Nigeria that is a criminal enterprise, praying for Nigeria that feeds on the blood of its own citizens, that it shall be well with Nigeria. That's what he's doing, 50, 60 years after the evil they created in place of the Nigeria that should have worked for everybody. And so the issue is we are no longer a federation because somebody divided the four regions of the time into 12 states, took all the economic assets, all their assets and powers, handed over to an omni, that there's some kind of a fraud, an illicit federal government, because you can't have a federal government without a federation. We don't have a federation anymore. We have a country. We don't have a federation anymore. We have a country, quite all right. Unitary, that's becoming a monster that is killing people in the Middle Belt, confiscating people's assets in Lagos and Port Harcourt, making life impossible for the ones in Aba and Onitsha. Because without electricity, where do you go? Without road, I saw some people rejoicing about the geometric, and then some loafers again come from somewhere to say, Southeast Development Commission. What kind of lunatics are we talking about like this? The same madmen who did not find the presence of mind to implement the reconstruction and rehabilitation and reconciliation of 1970 are now going to develop the dot in circle they created east of the Niger, the one they call Southeast. It takes being mad, it takes being out of your sense to think that you use this constitution to confiscate the sovereignty and the assets of people. Then you sit in Abuja and set up Southeast Economic, Southeast Development Commission. Has Niger Delta become Dorado since you created Niger Delta Development Commission? That the East should now begin to rejoice. And characters like Enyina Beribe and his co-travelers from that part were thinking that that was the better thing to do. We insist that our sovereignty cannot be subjugated to anything that does not take off from our own consent. Whatever it will take, that monster that is sitting on our sovereignty and trying to come to build our road for us, build electricity for us, build our schools for us, as if we have gone lame, as if we are no longer able to think. We can't elect to govern ourselves. You set up INEC, 68 items, everything that has gone wrong with Nigeria flow from this instrument of death. Those 68 chains are the reasons Nigeria are the way it is now, and nothing is going to change. Whether you think of economy or security, nothing, absolutely nothing is going to change. The only thing that is guaranteed, for every day we keep this instrument, the only thing that is guaranteed is that the union will go up in smoke. And I tell you, whatever it will take to bring down that stupid union, defined by this constitution, is what those who understand, who want life in place of death that Nigeria is dispensing, those who want freedom in place of the bondage that they've been locked into by a bunch of determined criminals who have now captured the state at the same time that Fulani is flowing into this place to try to take it for themselves. Let us get sensible for once. Let us listen now where we can. If anybody is stupid enough to think that this constitution will be basis of union for any length of time going into the future from now, I'm sorry for that person. Very sorry for that person. National Assembly, you are committing treason against the rest of us. You were sent to go to make laws under the constitution that we have made. We have not made any constitution. That's our contention across the last 24 years. The proof is there in the document. So if you choose to stand with the enemy to say on this constitution you stand forever, you are pitching yourself on a head-on position with the people you claim to represent. And God save you the day they are going to wake up to that realization that you are the one behind their torment, not anybody from afar. Because it is because you all gather in Abuja, validating this instrument, swearing to defend and uphold it, including the ones that are their local agents across the state, the governors and the senators and the house members. All of you are together. Anybody who can swear to defend and uphold this constitution is the very enemy the people are looking for at this time. They are hungry now. They are breaking into warehouses. They are going to go beyond those warehouses. If you don't come down from your high horse for us to go and find a meaningful solution to this problem, NINAS has placed a comprehensive plan, a well thought out process involving the peoples of Nigeria across these 24 years that have been taken to the international circles for stakeholders to get to know. The only people who are not paying attention are the ones who sit in Abuja pointing guns at everybody else. The National Assembly hear it and hear it very clearly. Nothing built on this constitution will stand, no matter what you do. And if it is the stupidity that Sabokata sold to you in December of 2023 that you are relying on, then the mediocrity that govern your affairs in Abuja has come to life. That you do not know that it is not in your place to make constitution. And you forgot that as recent as 2021-22, there was an attempt to amend constitution and NINAS challenged it. NINAS was able to countermand it by telling the states not to discuss the resolution about what do they call it, concurrence. And the National Assembly announced that the amendment has failed and that the National Assembly in any event does not have the power to make constitution. That people who are demanding a new constitutional arrangement is not about going to write another constitution. It's about first dismantling what is not working. Second, getting the owners of this, identify the people who federate. They are the ones who have to agree among themselves. They have to renegotiate. Our union has failed. They have to renegotiate it. There's no other way to go. The only other thing that can happen if no meeting is called soon enough is that unilateral actions are going to follow. Nobody's going to submit himself to be killed to the last in the manner that Nigeria is coming upon them. You remove everything that can make a people survive. You share their blood right in their presence, and you tell them that it has to remain so, even when they have remained peaceful in their pain, working out how to resolve it, non-violently. You are sucking their blood. You are inviting them to rescue themselves from you. That's what they're doing. And so, let nobody be in any doubt of any nature. I speak on behalf of the Vanguard group for how these things can be done peacefully. We have the body of knowledge for how it can be done. We have the framework that has been connected with the various owners of the territory you call Nigeria. If you think you have become stronger than all of us and you have become the owner of our sovereignty, we leave you to your devices. We stop here.
In my National Day broadcast, I outlined the political program of the federal military government and prescribed measures necessary for achieving the aims of the program. One of such steps to be taken was the appointment of a constitution drafting committee whose responsibility it would be to produce an initial draft of a constitutional arrangement which would provide a sound basis for the continuing existence of a united Nigeria. This is not the first time, of course, that we as a people have participated in the fashioning of a constitution for our country. First, was the experiment of a unitary government, which was imposed by the colonial government. Then a federal system which carried us into independence. And finally, a modified version of federalism which lasted rather tenuously until January 1966.
Thank you for listening. At this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Emi Onyige to take the synopsis of the topic. Mr. Onyige, please, you have the floor for synopsis.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Onyago Chukwemeke, and I welcome you all to today's Clubhouse meeting. Today's topic is New Constitutional Gambit, a NINAS Reprimand to National Assembly. The spokesperson is going to do justice to this topic today. And so in summary, I want us to know that NINAS is rebuking the National Assembly on their trick or evil plan to go and create a new constitution for the people behind our backs, behind the people's back, without the people's consent. This is the same thing that they did with the 1999 constitution, which is also not different from the 1914 constitution, the amalgamation process. All of these things are all the same process, the same thing, because the people have not been adequately consulted, the people have not been carried along. The right way by which a people's constitution should be made is not followed. And so NINAS is against this act that the National Assembly intends to carry out. NINAS has brought forth the right procedure by which a people's constitution should be made, which is stated in their 5-point agenda, which is the force majeure. And NINAS is taking the position that for us to successfully transition into a country of our choice, that is, the country that works for everybody, we must follow the due process. Even the government now has acknowledged that the 1999 constitution is a fraud, and so they are trying to quickly go and write a new constitution to present to the people. NINAS is rejecting that process. NINAS is rejecting the amendment of this current 1999 constitution or the creation of a new constitution without following the due process. And so NINAS, on behalf of the people, is inviting the government to go into transition, to rework the union, and so that we don't get it confused by union constitution. They are all the same. The constitution is a reflection of the union. It is that written document that expresses what the union or what the agreement of the ethnic nationality is. And so NINAS is saying that the refusal to follow the right process in working out this union is what will lead to the demise of Nigeria, and not the fear of discussing it. This is what the topic is about today. So we should have a listen and stay on alert. Thank you, and I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Onyago. At this point, I also invite the NINAS spokesperson, Mr. Tony Nadi, to take us further into this section. Mr. Nadi, please, you have the...
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And I would say congratulations to all of those who have been doing the work of liberation that needs to be done. The progress we are making is now visible to all. More confidence is being invested in the process. And just like the outreach with the NCF, which is expanding, there are other outreaches, people coming to us, groups coming to us, including media platforms that now want to beam the searchlight on what we're saying, seeing that it has become clear that what is in place will not survive the onslaught we are leading. And in the days ahead, more information will be shared concerning this convergence around our proposition. It is against that backdrop that we begin to look at where things are right now. The National Assembly that had boasted only a few weeks ago about how they were going to give us a new constitution, having tried all the amendments they thought would save the day for them and the system, we shut them down. Then they came proclaiming, oh, we give you a new constitution in 24 months. In fact, they were hoping that everybody would begin to clap and dance on the streets, that National Assembly will write new constitution. Because in their ignorance, and when I say ignorance, it is because we have interacted with many of them, they just do not know that constitution making is beyond their legislative mandate. They do not know that their mandate is limited to lawmaking. They think that anything constitution comes back to them, whereas constitution making is a transaction that requires constituent powers, which they do not have. Constituent powers, incidentally, reside exclusively in the constituent components, the constituent peoples of Nigeria, like the proprietors, promoters, shareholders of a company reserve the exclusive right to form their company in form of a memorandum of association and to write their articles of association. It's not the management they hired that will be doing that for them. What the constitution is, what the memo articles is to a company is what the constitution is to a country. The constitution, when it says we the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible and indissoluble country, in that preamble is the memorandum of association of entities, the constituent peoples of Nigeria that will each have been, countries of their own. The Yoruba could be a country of 60 million people. The eastern side could be a country of 70 million people. The middle belt could be a country of over 40 million people. And even each of the nationalities, I mean, they could be alone, they could be, in aggregation, in some formation. And so it is in that sense of memorandum of association and articles of association, floating the enterprise, and then hiring a management to do the business of the enterprise as that of a company that has to hire the experts that will come and do what the business, the owners of the enterprise have chosen. The same way, in the case of a country, the government is the hired management for the enterprise Nigeria. The process of hiring is what you call election, once in 4 years. But the memo and article remains the constitution, and at every point in time, if you were to alter anything in it, that is why it goes back to referendum. Anything about the constitution is not like any other law. where the representatives you elect can go and make law of the criminal justice, make law on contract, make law on all kinds of subject matters. But the question of the being of the union and the terms of the union remain for all times the exclusive business of the owners of the sovereignty. And if there are more than one, the owners of the sovereignties, like in the case of Nigeria that has a in excess of 300 constituent peoples, the Yoruba one, the Ojo one, the Ogoni one, the Igbo one, the Edo one, the Anang one, Efik, Tiv, Jokun, Bero, Urobo, everything in between. So those are the constituent peoples of Nigeria, and their sovereignty, it is on account of their sovereignty that the constituent power, the powers to float a political union, which we then call a country, is exclusive to them. And that is what they now reduce into writing. That is what they codify in what we call constitution. And so when you see that preamble that says, we the people have solemnly resolved to live together forever, it then concludes by saying, and do hereby enact, enact and give unto ourselves the following constitution. That is the articles. It is in that second part that you now begin to see the formations will be in 10 states or 20 states. We'll have 10 local governments as second tier or not tier at all. We have a so number of exclusive. They define the powers of the union office they are creating. They having retain their own power. They will describe their own powers, define their own powers, and most of the time they retain what we call the residual powers. Anything they don't specifically write down to be done by union office remains with them, even if it's a subject matter that nobody thought about before. There may be a new finding or a new technology that comes that brings or some development in society that now becomes something for which you have to legislate in some way. If it is not expressly, anything that is not expressly mandated or committed to the union office remains on the residual list, meaning that the federating units will have jurisdiction on that subject until they submit it to be managed by their union office, which is the federal government. You can't have a federal government if you do not have a federation. The Nigerian Federation died at the point in 1966 that the constitutions, the 5 constitutions that defined the union, got toppled by soldiers. And so, in considering where we are today, that NINAS had launched an onslaught against the fraud of 99, the amalgamation of 99 by which we were held in a union at gunpoint by people who are not willing to discuss with us, exactly as the British imposed the amalgamation of 1914 without talking to the owners of the sovereignties that they had, somehow confiscated by a combination of guile and brute force. When the British got here, there were kingdoms with whom they signed treaties. First, it was trading treaty, and then it became protection treaty, just to deceive them. The kings of those who signed those treaties with them did not have enough education to understand that what is written on the paper had compromised the sovereignty of the kingdoms. There was the oil rivers colony of Lagos. They signed with the elector of Egba land in the Yoruba space, and all of that everywhere. They signed with the Shekiri, all kinds of parchments of trading treaties that got elevated to protection treaties. Eventually, they began to consolidate, because these are lands and peoples. They began to consolidate those pieces of papers without talking to the owners of the lands. And they even carried it all the way to now merging them with the northern side, where the caliphate was already the Uthman Dan Fodio's inheritors were carrying on with their conquest agenda. So they have quite a substantial part of what was the northern Nigeria of the time. And so this foreign invader, the British, went on to meet the other invaders from Futajalon, and they combined what they had by conquest up to that point into what became 1914. No reference to the owners of the sovereignties. So they got, they got conscripted into the Nigeria that emerged. And from that time in 1914, all the way to now, the entity called Nigeria and its proprietors, especially the current proprietors, because by the time they went to Lancaster House in 1959, you could say that the regions became partly involved in the management of the entity. But from after 1966, the illicit federal government that emerged from the from the mother of the federation, because they killed the federation by toppling those constitutions that define the federation, 4 regional constitutions and 1 federal constitution, distilled by those regions. It was the regions that dictated what was written down as federal constitution. It was the regions that donated the powers that the federal government will have. It was the regions that financed the operations of the federal government from their own finances, from their own revenues. 15%, 15 as in 1/5. That was what the regions committed to, paying, to contributing for the upkeep of the federal government and for the, financing of the responsibilities they delegated to the federal government. So when the soldiers, led by the fellow who you heard his voice now, the butcher of Asaba, called Murtala Muhammad, who was the one that staged the revenge coup as a major on the 29th of July in 1966. It was Murtala Muhammad that organized what became the killing of Hiroshi and all the Igbo officers in the barracks. From there, they went into town, joined by characters like Lieutenant Muhammad Buhari, to hunt down Igbos, and they were killed under the supervision of that illicit federal government that they had declared. From that July, throughout August, all the way to September, to the end of the year, every attempt to get them to stop failed until the president of Ghana, General Ankara, invited all of them, because there was nowhere you could sit to meet in Nigeria anymore. Nobody from the east would go to any other part. Nobody from other parts would come to the east. So Nigeria had broken down. The Federation of Nigeria had collapsed. But that illicit federal government, operated by elements from the north and, of course, renegades from our own parts that joined them, not realizing they had a wider agenda to beat down everybody eventually, using some as willing tools in the first instance. And so, I'm just informing us that from that time to now, they had evaded every invitation to get the owners of the sovereignties that were confiscated and conscripted into this union from 1914 to discuss the terms of their union, because what made the First Republic collapse were still the things the British did in their desperation to empower that caliphate. It was their desperation to hand over power to that caliphate in 1960 that collapsed the birth of Nigeria. It was independence election that landed Awolowo in prison. An election he was convinced he won. But instead of handing power, in fact, they declared a result no different from what INEC did the other day, before they finished counting the votes. And I'm not telling you I'm not telling you any conjecture. I'm telling you the witness, the witness of an eyewitness. I'm telling you the evidence given to us by a British colonial officer who was involved, who was directed by his superiors, going all the way to the Governor General, on what to do to rig the election and make sure that the North emerged. And so Awolowo said no, went to court. Before you knew it, they accused him of something they had made up, and he found himself imprisoned. Then on the 29th of May 1962, the Constitution of Western Region was suspended, and the sole administrator appointed for that Western Region. That was the point at which the Yoruba lost their sovereignty to this caliphate. The attempt to push back from all of what had happened resulted in the Wild West that then brought the soldiers in January of 1966. We are tracing all of this because we are talking about the constitution on the table now, the 1999 constitution. It was that caliphate agenda which you could trace back to Ahmadu Bello's battle script of 1960. Make a map of Nigeria and place everybody that participated in all of what happened across those 5-6 years up to 1970. Place them on that map. Murtala Mohammed is, no matter where he came from before, he is credited to Kano. And he was a major at the time they staged the coup. The British didn't want to deal with him, so they decided to coronate Gowon, who was more malleable, more easy to work to direct. But what became the genocide aspect of that war, ranging from the killings that began with the Ironsis killing and the killing of Igbo officers across the barracks, and then Igbo in town, all of that part were championed by this butcher called Murtala Mohammed. The Asaba massacre you heard at the time they were retreating, the Biafran troops were retreating from Ori. And the Nigerian troops had, the Biafran troops had gone back into the east across the Niger. The Nigerian troops that were coming after them and coming into the east, Asaba was the first big Igbo town they met. It was that same butcher called Murtala Mohammed that staged what you now read as the genocide in Asaba. They summoned everybody to a location and killed off all the men. Took all the women and shared. In fact, they shipped those girls and women from Asaba to the north, distributed them. The officers took the ones they could take. The rank and file took all the ones they could take, and they carried the rest into the trucks, took them to Kano and Sokoto and Maiduguri to distribute to even the invalids. Some of those women are still alive today, unable to tell their story. And the very people that did those things are still alive, insulting us that what they had done was non-negotiable. You couldn't revisit it. The one in Mina said, oh, that's Ibrahim Bangida. If anybody should raise the issue anymore, he will go and wear his uniform and get back to the battlefield. That these issues were settled in the battlefield of Biafra, where they committed genocide that involved 3.5 million people in order to become the owner of everybody. So this broadcast you listen to, that voice of Murtala Mohammed you listen to, you heard when he talked about the British that experimented with unitary government and how at independence we settled for federalism, which was modified in 1963 but terminated in 1966. And so from that point in 1966, where himself and his co-travelers took over power, they took us back to unitarism. From the 27th of May in 1967, Murtala Mohammed and his principal, in quote, Yakubu Gowon, and all of them, they took us back to unitarism. What is the meaning of unitarism in this circumstance? That's centralized control by which the British managed Nigeria up to independence when we settled for federalism. From 54, consolidated in 59, So that federalism that allowed the owners of the sovereignties to be on the table was jettisoned. The man you heard his voice, Murtala Muhammad, was at the center of that jettisoning. He was the power behind the 9 years of Gowon. Gowon, he never took instruction from Gowon. Gowon, just it was whatever he wanted to do, because he was the head of the military wing of that caliphate that will own Nigeria. Eventually, in 1975, after they had done their genocide up to 1970, what that address you were listening to was when in 1975 he pushed out Gowon in an uneventful coup and then took charge. The first task he gave out was for the drafting of the constitution, the unitary constitution. If you listen to him again, and I'm sure that video is posted in the comment section, if you listen to him again, in fact, it was posted on all our platforms today. If you listen to Murtala Muhammad again, like the moderator was trying to remind us or point out to us as the videos were being played, you will see that when somebody says that they were going to write a constitution to guarantee the continued existence of Nigeria, of a united Nigeria, is that not an admission that Nigeria had collapsed and they were trying to look for something like Mwabweze, who did the draft? The Mwabweze who was invited by Reprimand with them to do the draft that Murtala Muhammad wanted, had confessed that they were instructed to write a unitary constitution, and that they believed, they were convinced that that unitary constitution will bring Nigeria to unity faster than anything else. That was the confession of Mwabweze. That was what Obo, the former governor of Akwa Ibom, was reading out in that Lagos colloquium. Because we had challenged Mwabweze in what they did sometime in 2013 when he went to molest Jonathan over the attempt to call a sovereign conference. We challenged him publicly, and he was so comprehensively defeated in the argument he tried to raise that he now called a press conference to recant his position. All of this nonsense that Olisa Abokoba and Ozekome and all these charlatans all over the place are trying to get the National Assembly to go and write constitution over our head. You saw all of them. Olisa Abokoba quoted Ben Mwabweze in December of 2023 when he at Akpabio's colloquium, Tinubu present, Akpabio present, Olisa Abokoba was guiding the National Assembly on how to draw some power from the air to write a constitution and impose on us. Then we challenged him. We came frontally against him. His position collapsed. They regrouped and gathered in Lagos. Then it was Ozekome, again citing Mwabweze. The position Olisa Abokoba and Ozekome were citing came from a 2011 document that Ben Mwabweze, still trying to retain this unitarianism by all means, 2011. At the time, Jonathan was struggling with the people who were pushing to recover power. Mwabweze stood with them and wrote that treatise that Olisa Abokoba and Ozekome were quoting with vigor, that our sovereignty is now in the hand of government, that the National Assembly is at liberty to write constitution, which in jurisprudence is heresy. And so the Mwabweze had recanted from that position in 2013 after our encounter with him, and if I should be specific, after my encounter with him, because Vanguard newspaper invited us to debate the subject, and his position collapsed hopelessly. He was so embarrassed because he had been teaching this subject, writing books on this subject for so many years, almost 45 years. Most of the people who are professors of law today, senior advocates, them and their teachers and the teachers of their teachers were all groomed in that wrong jurisprudence. That's why we're in a country today that people are sitting in the National Assembly pretending they are now the owners of our sovereignty. And you saw this semi-literate Benjamin Kanu talking about, how they have now said that they are not going to write another new constitution because of the challenge that have been mounted. Unfortunately for them, they do not know that whatever they do by way of amendment to that 1999 constitution will go down with the substantive constitution, because the foundation, what NINAS has, defeated is the basis, the foundation upon which that constitution is, standing, is the falsehood that we, the people, have solemnly resolved to live together forever as indivisible, and have therefore made and given unto ourselves that constitution. We have the proof, because it's printed in the same constitution, of the fact that we never met, we never agreed on anything, we never wrote any constitution. And so the entire document is gone. And so if they think that they are going to amend by whatever means they do, even the colloquium in Lagos told them that the constitution is illegitimate, being of illicit origin, and that even 1,000 amendments cannot cure that illicit foundation. It's a forgery, it's a fraud. We went to court in 2007, they have no answer. In fact, the Attorney General of Nigeria admitted our contention in writing, joining issues with us in court. And so, today, having attempted to go to amend by themselves, it wasn't working. It was in the desperation to avoid that same thing the British avoided in 1914. That same thing all the conferences on Constitution of Nigeria had avoided, including Obasanjo's 2005 conference, including what became the 2014 conference, which wasn't Jonathan's instruction. They turned it upside down between them and settled the government, and then the conference itself at plenary. They said they were not going to visit the foundation for which Jonathan convened them to visit. And so, again, they bypassed. We who pressed President Jonathan to call that meeting, we had the modalities that will bring the owners of the sovereignties to the table. Yoruba will come as Yoruba, Ijo will come as Ijo, having agreed among themselves at home that they will go to federate, and then sending their own nominees, mandated properly with constituent powers, to go to discuss terms of union and terms of union. Two different things. To discuss union, meaning that Yoruba will want to federate with Fulani and Ijo. And then terms of union, in what formation? On what kind of power relations? But they abandoned those modalities and went on with a one-stage meeting. Everybody come, and then they rewrote it into 600 recommendations that Osekama was trying to market the other day, in the supposition that sovereignty was now with government, that all they need to do is just write down whatever. If they call us, we have to rejoice. Otherwise, they can actually do without calling us. That was the purpose of the section 4 and subsection 1 that Osekama was pointing them to, that they could just draw that power, take a booklet from somewhere, remove the one that was put there by the soldiers, and then it becomes constitution. That's the kind of nonsense that they are doing. Unfortunately for them, they didn't anticipate the level of pushback that they've seen. And then yesterday, they turned up to say, okay, we're not writing any new constitution. If we attempt to write new constitution, it will lead to anarchy. Their new position. Where does that leave them? We're just going to laugh at them and mock them and carry on. Luckily for us, the remedy that we seek is available to us, and it does not depend on whether government agrees or it doesn't. The remedy we seek is to retrieve our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is only detained by that falsehood That falsehood we have defeated already. When we said we have delegitimized that constitution, it is because of what we have done that it is reverberating all over the place now. The National Assembly cannot sleep. That was why they said they are going to write a new constitution, having seen that the other one is irredeemable. The colloquium in Lagos, new constitution. The NCEF, new constitution. Obasanjo that helped them through this 1979 and 99, go and call a meeting of the people to decide how they want to live. Was that not what Obasanjo went preaching from Port Harcourt since, middle of last year? Shoyinka describing it again. Moghalu telling them, we don't have a nation. Yes, we have a country, but we have not discussed the fundamental, the protocols of our coexistence. The economy is in shambles because we have everybody's working at cross purposes. You saw Adebanjo in that Lagos colloquium saying that we have no union. We have not made any constitution. So how else will anybody have to say it for those deaf and dumb representatives and senators, obdurate parliament, to realize that they are committing treason against all of us by confiscating in continuation from where Absalom Abubakar stopped, from where Murtala Muhammad stopped. Because it was Murtala Muhammad that commissioned the codification of the Victory Charter from 1970. From that war, the Victory Charter for we now own you, we have conquered you, was what he was commissioning in that video you listened to on the 18th of October in 1975. It is that thing he commissioned that became 1979 Constitution. It was that 1979 that they carried forward to 1999. Therefore, it is Murtala Ramat Mohammed that dictated the entire content of this unitary constitution by which we're enslaved. And when you put him on the map, put Gowon on the map, put all the Danjumans and Obasanjos on the map, we go back to Ahmadu Bello's battle script of 1960, you will see that everybody played exactly what role they were assigned by that Ahmadu Bello in 1960. The inheritors, that's the heirs to the empire. The willing tools from the Middle Belt and the conquered territories of the South, in which Obasanjo is the head slave, enforcing their will amongst us. So where we are now is that they know that we have no union. Even in that 1975, why was the constitution intended to guarantee the continued existence? Those were the words of Murtala Muhammad. And then Nwabweze and Co wrote it for them. Obasanjo helped them process it and revive it 20 years after. So where we are now is that what they said they are going to do by abandoning the search for new constitution. Of course, we already understand that their recourse, the attempt to go to 2014, the report of 2014, is again to avoid the discussion that should be happening today under our own 5-point proposition. That two-stage procedure in which the Yoruba, the Igbo, everybody in the first stage first settle the question of whether they want to be in union with anybody, because the collapse of that constitution is the end of the union anchored on that constitution. They didn't understand it like that all this while. That was why they were just hoping that anyhow we make our noise, they're waiting for us in the National Assembly. They were only investing their energies to be sure they were in control of everything inside that National Assembly. In their ignorance, from which we have suffered immensely in the past, now we have to benefit from that ignorance. Characters like Professor Yadudu, the quota Professor Yadudu, that have been their leading lights in matters of constitution, Remember that Yadudu wrote a letter after their last attempt at amendment collapsed. Professor Yadudu wrote the National Assembly a letter to say, don't look left or right. Continue in your amendments. Don't discuss new constitution with anybody. It is that advice of Yadudu that they are now falling back to, having been halted in the attempt to write a dummy of a constitution to impose on us. At the guidance of Olisabakoba and Ozekome and Isesage and all such illiterate professors and senior advocates. I don't even want to talk about the 9 experts, the 9 lawyers they said because talking about them will be elevating them beyond there isn't even any need to talk about them because they are not going to become larger legal luminaries in quote than Ben Wabwezi or Lisa Bakoba or Zekome or Isesage that wrote the books they use in school. All of these people I've mentioned are illiterate on that subject of jurisprudence of constitution making, and we have defeated them in the open. We didn't go to discuss it in one corner or in one beer parlor. We came to the public podium and defeated them, and their ringleader had to recant in writing. You heard it yourself at the Lagos colloquium when Obang Victor Atta had to read it out. So where are they coming from now? Who again is teaching them this nonsense that they are preaching? That our sovereignty is now with the government, so the National Assembly will be talking about constitution. So where they are is that we have shut down that constitution. The options they thought they had of how to replace it without talking to us has failed. They've again made U-turn from their plan to go and write a constitution over our head to now say they are going to go to amendments. That is throwing in the towel. We have no constitution. No matter, it's not only we now telling them, everybody is telling them that no matter the quantum of amendments they try to make, it wouldn't cure it. So we're just going to ignore them. I'm telling us now that what NINAS will do is to ignore them in their stupidity and obduracy and carry on with what we're doing, because there's no part of what we're doing that requires anything from them. The owners of the sovereignty will carry on, take down that constitution, take back their own portions of that union that has failed, and go to another meeting if they want to federate. And if no meeting is holding, everybody will keep their land. Everybody will stay back and turn their back to that stupid Abuja. And in taking back their lands and their assets, the guns to defend themselves, which was what they went to discuss in Aburi, the guns to defend themselves in their spaces, which that constitution that were defeated forbade them from touching, they will not require anybody's permission to get any kind of arms they need to defend themselves, because the right to self-determination also includes the right to armed self-defense. The constitution that prohibited it is what was defeated. Whether they want to hear it or not, whether they know it or not, is inconsequential. The owners of the sovereignty are going to work with the processes we already have in black and white. That's why we say joint jailbreak. Let nobody hop out of line to say, oh, like we saw the people doing Biafra in one corner of the East. You saw how they've been criminalized by that same constitution. Many of them have been killed. Some are standing trial now for treason that the government is committing, because they are stupid and unwilling to listen. We told them what to do. They decided to go try their gamble. The same thing that happened in Ibadan the other day. Banja Kintoye came and then turned around to say, oh, that what NINAS is doing is inferior to what Yoruba want. If the constitution is being targeted for collapse with a map that is broken, Yoruba land marked out as complete, including the Yoruba, Okwara, and Kogi. If the constitution collapses and the Yoruba land falls back into Yoruba hand, what other independence or freedom is anybody else looking for? The same thing with the other people. The ones who have done Sharia have gone their way. their constitutions, the charters and constitutions required to carry on if Nigeria will not come to meeting, which we are not begging them for. They are the ones who have to, with the onus is now on them to come to convince us to be in union with them. Right now, we have no union. It took 25 years of working with a strategy that was too sophisticated for them and their arrogant ignorance. And so, we do not have to worry about whatever they do with the constitution that is dead. Whatever they put on it will die, will be buried with it. It wouldn't affect us in any way that they amended one part or the other. That's entirely their business. It wouldn't slow us down. We're carrying on. In fact, they have made our task lighter. Because the attempt they were going to make to provide an alternative have been abandoned. They've come back to that dead horse to try to flog it into life. The IG already, the Inspector General of Police already disowned them for the one they say they want to do state police. So they're wasting their time. We are carrying on with what we are doing. They have made our task lighter. They are confused now. Because that place they are running back to is already shut down. If they had stayed where they were, it would have been easier for them to come to the point where they could actually open up a meeting with us. But the God that gave us victory has determined that they will have no other choices outside the unconditional surrender we offered them by the transition we offered. That transition to say, we have no quarrel with you, be in government house in a limited capacity, let the owners of the sovereignty go into their meeting like South Africa did in 1990. They have a limited time now. They've actually limited their own time for accepting that offer to surrender while they can. Otherwise, the actions, the unilateral actions in self-determination, completely legitimate, will amount to comprehensive defeat against them. Because the day the owners of the sovereignty wake up to realize that it is their own representatives, some pretending to be president, others pretending to be senator and governor, that it is their own kinsmen that are swearing to defend and uphold the instrument by which the enemy is enslaving them. I'm sorry for them in that day. They won't find people like me to come and moderate. I will be in the comfort of wherever I'm watching them from. That mob will discipline them in whichever way they deem fit. It's after they are finished with them that will now come back to that place they should have gone to the first day. So they have a choice: surrender unconditionally to this 5-point proposition, or wait to be defeated comprehensively by what will follow. We have our own programs, and if anybody is still in doubt about how what we are saying will interface with what they are doing, the only thing that matters, that constitution that says, we the peoples of Federal Republic of Nigeria, that is the Yoruba, the Ijo, the Anang, the Efik. There's no other way to define the people than the owners of the sovereignties. It's not any group of Nigerians you meet in Biapalo or in marketplace that becomes we the people. It is we the Ijo, we the Ogoni, we the Igbo, we the Yoruba. That's the only meaning of that we. Having family and solemnly resolved to live together, that's another compartment. That is the negotiation and discussion that must now happen. That negotiation that the British avoided, that negotiation that Obasanjo avoided in his conference, that negotiation that the conferees of 2014 avoided in the modalities they adopted. It is in that second compartment that it will be settled. Then you come to the third compartment of do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. That is what has to be resolved at this time. Our task is to bring the matter to a logjam. The logjam is already there. That is, the collapse of that constitution already has created a logjam. But the people are carrying on obdurately, carrying on in defiance. They are defying us. What can you all do to us? Oh, we're far away, Abuja, you can't come here. We don't need to go to Abuja. We're going, if the owners of the lands and the assets are going to take their lands, take their assets, pick up guns, and charge out whoever comes in the name of Nigeria. Because that Nigeria that brought everybody to everybody's space is anchored on this constitution that is dead now. They are not seeing it because they've not seen the owners come out in their spaces. But they are going to come out. We are going to carry on until they wake up. And when they wake up, I'm sorry for the people that they will count on the side of the enemy in that day. And so our 5-point proposition is straightforward. Admit what the problem is. All of us must shout it from the rooftops. Commit to solving the problem by jettisoning that constitution. Commit to suspending further elections. Under which constitution are you going to any other election? For the people that are talking about 2027, where is the Nigeria they want to govern? The one of 2023, have they come out of it? Have we accepted it? The only thing we can take from 2023, we already told them, is to transform that illicit outcome into a transitioning arrangement. If they don't accept it while the offer lasts, whatever they see, they will take. Then item 4 is those 2-stage procedures in which the owners of the sovereignties will sort out themselves in their spaces first and commit to being in union with anybody else. And that's by referendum. There's no other way to determine whether they want or they don't want. Nobody's going to speak for them in faraway place, including this bunch of politicians. And then if our people stand up to say they can't proceed with this constitution anymore, an announcement will have to be made articulating those 4 points in that 5 points. They announced the number 5 is that time-bound announcement of a transition. That's what is in item 5. So item 1, is anybody still arguing that the constitution is the problem why agitations are all over the place? Unitary constitution? No. Is anybody able to argue that we should not jettison the document? Only the buffoons that are sitting in Abuja that are still saying so. Will anybody agree with number 1 and 2, like Alfred Bolala did, and then say that we should go to another election before we come back to solving it later? No, it doesn't make sense. And if the reason we are rejecting this one is that it was done without reference to the owners of the sovereignty, will anybody be able to argue successfully against item 4? That's how potent, that's how indivisible, that's how, you cannot defeat what we have put on the table. They cannot find any answer other than the humiliation they will suffer. Did anybody see the Fulani lamenting that they are being pushed out of Sokoto, that they can't even find accommodation in Sokoto? Did anybody see it? That's their situation. The people that impose this constitution are now, the Fulani never imagined that anything could challenge them. The alliance we built the alliance we built of the rest of Nigeria, the victim territories, has put them and their agents in a pinfall. We have encircled them. They have no escape route right now. They will have to depend on the accommodation the Hausa give to them. Because that constitution is their backbone. We have broken it. Is it Yoruba land they will come and claim now, or Ijo land, or Tiv land? When the owners stand up, taking back their assets. So we have them in that pinfall. Then the instrument, the constitution they impose through their military wing, you saw Murtala Mohammed. We have it in chokehold. We did not make any constitution. We never met. It's a lie that we, the people, agreed to be in union. It's a lie that we make this constitution, made and gave ourselves this constitution. And so, to that extent, unless we give up that claim, they have no answer to it. So that remains a chokehold until that constitution dies. We only need to hold it where we are holding it now. It doesn't matter the number that you see in these meetings right now. And when that chokehold is maintained long enough, it dies, that instrument dies, and the people who are relying on it we'll have to make other arrangements for how to prevail. I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insightful and detailed explanation. It's question and comment time. Please, if you have any question or comment, kindly raise your hand or tap your mic twice. Okay, Justina, please, you have the floor for your comment or question.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome
Go ahead.
to tonight's section. Tonight has been a very emotional one that I just found myself crying. How that people will just come and kill in your own land and distribute even the women to places you don't understand. It could be anybody. So please, I just want to be cleared because these things are very, very emotional. That these men that have committed this gruesome genocide, being that we did not make this constitution at this junction that we are, knowing that Nigerian courts belong to them, is it not possible that these men should be tried in maybe ICC? It's painful that after committing this kind of sin against humanity, that they would get away with it. One. Then another problem, another concern I've been having for a while. As a frontliner, sir, in this 2014 confab that everybody wants to deceitfully rely on, what was really you guys' agenda discussing Nigeria? Because as a girl in her late 20s, in 2014, it was even glaring, being not a politician, I could smell it that Goodluck will just lose this election because it was a gang up against him, and he is from a state that has just 8 local governments. Of course, you know that. The whole Southeast voting for him will not even make him win. Why was it not possible that he should be advised to take away his own part, the people that are willing to federate or to unionize? Why is it not possible that at 2014 we should have just solved this problem with him? Because now we're at the begging end of a president that even knew the truth, that was part of the struggle, and is not willing to even listen to any voice of reasoning. Being that I've seen a paper that was trending through last week that he said that he does not believe in one Nigeria. That is the man who is president today. So the high rate of pretense and deceit, sir, I think it's really unbearable. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Did I hear you say? Did I hear you say what did we go to discuss in 2014? Was that your question?
Sir,
what did we set out to do?
Yes, the confab now. Everybody wants to rely on it as though it's going to be the legitimate document.
Now, the reason I asked you the question is to make it clear that we went to Jonathan to say he has to
all the people of Nigeria and discuss.
Oh yes. What we took to Jonathan. No, hold on. What we took to Jonathan before he made any announcement of any conference, what we took to Jonathan that needed to be done is exactly what NINAS has placed on the table now. Jonathan listened to us and mandated the Femi Okuromu committee to go and work out the modalities, the details for how the conference will hold. Immediately, Okuromu committee went to work. The Caliphate and their friends from Tinubu of Southwest, they because they wanted to get rid of Jonathan and get to power, they then derailed the modalities away from what could have brought the owners of the sovereignty to the table to discuss the foundation upon which we are building. At that point, we pulled out to say there's nothing this conference that is now, because they have now become a majority, pretending that is the whole of the Southwest and the whole of the North. That's what happened. Jonathan became the minority. At the time he had convinced them, it was on the floor of that conference that they consolidated what became APC. And so we said, they even tried to put my name in that just to say, oh, he was a part of. We said no. If they put our names to it, we are going to call a press conference to disown them. So the conference, did you watch the 2013 STV interview the day after Jonathan convened appointed the committee of Okoromu that planned the conference? Did you watch that interview?
The one on STV, sir.
The one on STV.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, I did, sir.
Did you not hear me say that we pulled away because they have changed the modalities into something else, and that the conference will fail? It wasn't Jonathan's fault. It was their decision not to do what Jonathan asked them to do, because that instruction is in black and white. So they decided to go into brigandage, threatening. Buhari was outside organizing, the terror of Fulani that was invading. They were throwing bombs all over the place. Eventually, they did what they wanted to do and then had to go to election, because if what we wanted done got underway, there wouldn't have been election in 2015. That conference would have produced a result of new protocols, the kind of alternative that we will have now when the NINAS. What has happened is that NINAS has now taken over all of those things government should have been doing. But they had 20 years from the time we began to talk to them before we came out with this force majeure, still offering them accommodation to come to the table. But they're arrogant in their ignorance. So that's about that. We did not go to any conference in 2014. The people that went to conference were trying to preserve that constitution, because they then formulated the terms of reference that whatever they do, from whatever they discuss, will be integrated into the 1999 constitution. So we did not go to any conference with them. We ignored them and carried on with what we were doing, which was why the solemn assemblies continued from 2015 until the force majeure came, when everybody had done their solemn assemblies, to reject that constitution in its entirety. And talking about punishing the people that did all the genocide, the mandate of the International Criminal Court, the British that organized the crime, it was the British that organized the crime. Murtala Mohammed and co carried it out. The British is out there. Nobody has ever mentioned Nigeria genocide in any place. It's only, it comes in numbers, only second to the one of the Jews. That happened much earlier, but they are still discussing it to today. The genocide of the Jews of 1939. But the one that happened in 1966 is looking like remote history, and the very perpetrators of it are being gallanded all over the place, worshipped as heroes. But unfortunately for them, Section 6, take note of this, that's the answer to your question. They are not going unpunished. Section 6, subsection 6D of that constitution offered them immunity from all those atrocities, the killings, the expropriations, the people that took your land as their oil block, still holding it. Section 6, subsection 6C of the 1999 Constitution offered them immunity with a date. Everything they did in the name of Nigeria from the 15th of January 1966 to the 29th of May in 1999 are beyond the powers of the court to probe into, meaning absolute immunity. No court has license to listen to you. So on the international circuit, the British blocked out every possibility of calling them to account. Inside Nigeria, the courts are expressly forbidden. All the courts and all the tribunals in the land are expressly forbidden inside the constitution from listening to any complaint coming from that period. But when that constitution crashes as it's bound to crash. Now we have defeated it. It's just a matter of taking it to interment. When the constitution is bundled out of the way, that immunity will fall through. Every one of them, even the one that have died, something will be done to ask them what happened. That's part of why they are struggling with all their energies to avoid anything that may shift that constitution aside for even 1 minute. Because not only would they have to account for what they did wrong in that period, all the concessions that are coming from that exclusive list. What is oil block? You take Ijo land, you take Ogoni land, and you give it to some fellow sitting in Meduguri, Mederibe. It is the booty of that war. The port of Lagos, the port of Port Harcourt, the limestone. Where are they getting the raw material for the steel they want to go and process in Ajakuta? Where the coal deposits stop is where those iron ore began. They had to build a railway, moving the project that should have been in Eastern region just across the border into where they landed it in Ajakuta. So Nigeria is a continuing crime. Every day it's in place, is crime incorporated on all aspects. But there are our own people who are parading themselves as governors and senators, swearing to defend and uphold this instrument. That constitution is going down. That immunity is going down.